Hey, Astro Kids, and welcome back. This is another video, and today we are taking a look at March 2021 for all fire signs. So, if you are a Leo ascendant, Leo moon, Aries ascendant, or Aries moon, or Sagittarius ascendant, or Sagittarius moon, then this video is for you. So let's go ahead and get into these transits that are coming here in the month of March. So starting off this month in March, we're starting with the moon in Virgo, and this is going to shift over into Libra and continue along this path until the moon comes back to the sign of Scorpio, which is where we will end this month of March. Now, also along with that, we will have a new moon happening in Aquarius on the 11th. And so we'll talk a little bit about that new moon that is coming up there. Also, we're going to see the sun shift signs later on here on the 14th of March. But we're also going to see Mars meet up with Rahu, which is a big part of that Mars transit that we talked about. And so if you have not watched that video yet on Mars in Taurus, make sure to check that out. There's a link above and down in the description as well for you to look into this Mars transit. And there are two parts to that. And so if you are in the group of Aries through Virgo, then you want to check out part 1 of that Mars and Taurus video. If you are in the other group of Libra through Pisces, then you want to check out that second part of the Mars and Taurus video. So that's going to give you the update on what is coming here on the 21st. So pretty soon here as we start to shift ahead to leave behind this month of February. Now we're also going to see the moon, Mars, and Rahu meet up. So not only is this going to be Mars and Rahu that are meeting up, but here on the 19th, we're going to see the moon join in on the party here with this large combination in the nakshatra of Rohini. And so there's a lot coming here in terms of karmic lessons, in terms of your work, your discipline, your focus, as Mars comes into the sign of Taurus. And so most of what is happening here during this month of March has a lot to do with the moon's transit. So we're going to talk a lot about what the moon is doing, how it's moving during this particular month of March. We do have Mercury moving along with the sun into the sign of Pisces. That'll happen there on the last day of March. And I did add in those 3 extra planets. Many people have been asking about how these can be incorporated into Vedic astrology. And so I did end up putting in Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus there into the mix as well. I am going to give you a review of this new deck that I'll be using that has a lot to do with Vedic astrology, but there's also those 3 extra planets included, and shows a relationship to the lords. And so there's a lot here that is coming ahead that I will give you a sneak peek of in this video. So we're going to get into this, and we will start off for those of you with the sign of Aries. So this is for you if you have an Aries ascendant or Aries moon. So let's go ahead and get into this. So this is your March 2021 horoscope for those of you with an Aries ascendant or Aries moon. And I am using my brand new deck here that I'm going to give you a review of later on. But this is the Vedic Astrology Oracle. And so this is going to be a great deck moving forward as I've shifted here into Vedic astrology. instead of tropical astrology. And I will leave a link down below in the description if you are curious about this deck, if you're looking into it. But let's go ahead and take a look at the sign of Aries. So, for those of you with an Aries moon or Aries ascendant, that moon, of course, is going to shift through all of your houses. And we will talk about what the moon is doing as we get into those weekly horoscopes. So, I'm going to focus a little bit less on what the moon is doing, with the exception of some major conjunctions that the moon is going to come into throughout your chart. So the moon is going to shift through Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio for the first 4 days of this transit. It is going to conjoin with K2 here as well on the 5th. And so as the moon is getting ready to shift into the sign of Sagittarius, it comes into this conjunction with K2. Remember that K2 is hanging out in Scorpio in its exaltation. And so there's a lot that is happening here in terms of dealing with the shadow aspects of life, especially for those of you with an Aries ascendant. Remember that Aries is the natural zodiac. So for those of you with an Aries ascendant, Scorpio is right in its own house where there's a lot of deep transformation, a lot of shadow work, a lot of shared resources and secrets that are connected to this eighth house. And so with K2 there, a lot that is happening in terms of deep inner work and transformation, these transformative experiences coming into your life. And as the moon comes in here, this really brings this deep into your awareness. And of course, the moon is going to continue to transit throughout your eighth house in every single month, right? This moon is changing from 2 to 3 days. So it's the fastest planet. And so the moon coming in here, activating your eighth house once again in this conjunction to K2. And this is happening in the Jyeshta Nakshatra, where this is a very intense part of Scorpio, right? This has a lot to do with your internal creativity. This has a lot to do with your inspiration, the deepest part of the mind, and taking that and using that as a resource. And so there is a lot here in terms of what you can gain from this transit overall of K2 sitting there in your eighth house, but also with the moon there, really bringing this into your mind of the creative potential that you can use during this month of March. And for those of you who have not looked at that previous video where I went into that full moon video, there is a lot of creative energy for those of you with an Aries ascendant or Aries moon that you can really tap into and use. And so this becomes a part of this transit as well. Now, on the 9th of March, the moon is going to join in on that major stellium that is happening there in the sign of Capricorn. So remember that we had this huge, ginormous stellium here in the sign of Capricorn. And we've broken this up a little bit, but there's still Jupiter and Saturn that are hanging back here in the sign of Capricorn. And so there's a lot here in terms of what you can build and create for yourself. Again, this creative energy coming through. And for those of you who are working with Pluto as well, Pluto is there. And so this also becomes a great time here of transformation, right? That Pluto energy is that of destruction and rebirth, bringing things back in their purest and most simplest forms. And so there's a lot here in terms of how you can really shift and move some of this old energy out of your life and start working with the new, start working on new projects. This is happening with this stellium up in your 10th house, where you can get more creative with the moon hanging out there in your 10th house. And so, this is a great time to focus on your career, your projects, your ambitions, your achievements with all of this going on. Now, there is a new moon happening on the 13th of March. And so this new moon will take place in your 11th house. Again, really great creative energy that you can tap into here and really use this to create something amazing in your life for many of you. So this becomes a very special month for you in terms of creativity, working on projects, looking to your future hopes and dreams, your plans, the things that you'd like to achieve, really focusing and honing in on that energy. We have a new moon here that is happening here in your 11th house of gains, of hopes and dreams. And so this really becomes about tapping into that. And of course, we will talk more about this new moon as we go into the transit, the horoscope for this new moon in Aquarius that is coming up here. Now, on the same day, this is where Mars starts to get closer in that conjunction with Rahu. And so Mars is really passionate here in the sign of Taurus, which is sitting there in your second house. And remember that this is Rahu in Rohini. So this is where Mars starts to enter into this nakshatra of Rohini. And now you're working with this moon-like energy, this creative force, right? Remember, we talked about how Rohini is symbolized by the chariot. It is all about your passion, your creativity. It's directing you. And so this is very much a time to work towards the things that you want, especially as this is activating that second house of wealth and possessions, where this becomes a great time to acquire wealth, to work for wealth, to acquire the things that you want in your life. And so, really, this whole month of March becomes a great time to work towards your dreams, your goals, your achievements, putting in the work and the effort, the time. Remember that this is Mars in Taurus, where this is about seeing those slow moving results. Taurus is about doing things step by step, right? It's at the basis, the foundation. And so there's a lot here in terms of putting in the work, putting in the determination, putting in the effort to see these things through. Now, you do want to be careful here with Mars conjunct Rahu in your second house, where this can give you too much desire, where there is this splurging or this overspending that can take place with this activating your second house. There's a lot here in terms of, are you putting out too much in terms of trying to gain the possessions that you want, trying to spend, trying to put a lot of energy into building a solid foundation, putting a lot of energy into your family, putting a lot of energy into your values, where you're actually putting out more energy than you are actually receiving or retaining in your life. And so this also becomes a great time of actually storing your money, saving up your money as you're working on these dreams, these goals, these creative projects. For many of you, this becomes a great time to save and store your wealth and values as you are here in the month of March. So around the 19th of March is when we see the moon start to get closer to this Mars Rahu conjunction. And so not only is Mars and Rahu here, but the moon is here. And so remember that the moon is very emotional, right? The moon is representing the mind. And so there is a lot here in terms of those desires starting to increase, especially as the moon is exalted here in Taurus. And Mars really starts to become agitated because Mars is already in its neutral position where it's not as strong. And now it is sandwiched between the moon and Rahu, where there is a lot of tension here in terms of your desires, where Mars is starting to become very impulsive, very agitated. It wants to achieve something, it wants to see quick results, and it's not quite as happy being here in Taurus, where everything is much more slow, right? This slow paced movement of Taurus that's very calm, that's very grounded, is agitating for Mars. Mars wants to go after what it wants. It's fast, it's impulsive, it's aggressive. And Taurus is really holding this back. And Rahu is looking in terms of long-term goals, even though Rahu is very impulsive as well. Remember that Rahu is a friend to Saturn, where it's actually about your long-term goals and dreams, right? It doesn't have quite that impulsive nature of Mars, where it's like, I want to get what I want right now. Rahu wants what it wants, but it is willing to wait to get there too, where the shadow aspect of Rahu is taking shortcuts. But remember that Rahu is quite happy here in the sign of Taurus, and the moon is happy. It's exalted in Taurus. Mars is a bit on edge. And so you want to be careful about how you're using this energy. How much energy, again, are you putting into spending, splurging, building? There's a lot here in terms of, are you saving? Are you storing up your wealth? With Rahu there and the moon, there can be a bit of illusion, right? The moon is representing the mind, where there can be this illusion in your mind where you're not quite seeing things clearly here as this conjunction happens here. There's a lot in terms of, are you only seeing the desires of what you want? Are you only seeing what you want to bring in, but not necessarily seeing the steps of how to get there, not necessarily seeing the steps of how to build security around this? So you really want to watch out for how you are using this particular combination. Now, on the last day of March, Mercury will shift over into the sign of Pisces. And this is happening after the Sun shifts into Pisces as well on the 14th. And so we are going to see this energy of the Sun and Mercury shift back into your 12th house, where there's a lot of focus now that is on your spirituality, your dream world, where you might want to isolate, to seclude yourself during this period. And so this becomes a great time of meditation, of inward reflection, especially as there's all of these impulses and desires that are happening with K2 in your eighth house and with this Moon Mars Rahu combination over in your second house. This becomes a really great time to actually look inward and reflect, because there's a lot here in terms of impulsiveness, a lot here in terms of going after all of these desires that is happening, where you're not quite seeing everything as clearly in terms of the long run, the long game of building, of storing, of putting things together slowly, of taking it step by step. And so, for those of you who are being more impulsive, those of you who are running into walls, because remember, this is Mars in Taurus, where Taurus is not a fast moving sign, right? Taurus is about really taking things step by step. And so, as you are moving ahead here, for those of you who are running into walls, running into frustration, not seeing the results that you want, this becomes a good time to really sit with yourself, to really go into a place of meditation, of reflection, of retreat, because this is where you can get a lot of insight from the Sun and Mercury. And of course, remember that we're going to have this combust Venus that is going on throughout this transit. So you want to be careful of how you are actually looking at your desires, right? A lot of desires that can come up, especially as this is a combust Venus that will take place back in your 12th house. And if you have not checked out that Venus video in Aquarius, make sure to check that out. But Venus is going to sit back in your 12th house as it comes out of that Venus and Aquarius transit. And so, as Venus shifts over into your 12th house, there is going to be a lot here in terms of these desires, right? Remember that a combust Venus does not function correctly. It gives these strong desires. And in the 11th house, this really was a great thing for you, as this gave you this long term perspective of the things that you want in the long run. But as it comes back into the 12th house, it becomes very watery, very confusing back in that 12th house, where you can dream of things and you can want things in your mind. But then there's something here where, are these things healthy for you? This is going to be looking at your sixth house. Where are you desiring things that are healthy for you, or are you desiring things that are making you escape, that are making you go into this place of illusion, of addiction, of this escapism from reality? And so you want to be cautious of that, and especially with K2 in your eighth house, where there's a lot going on in terms of deep desires, of deep internal transformation, a lot of shadow aspects of yourself that can come up to the surface here, really revealing these deeper aspects of yourself, where there's a lot that can really need to be healed and worked through for many of you here with an Aries ascendant or Aries moon. So this month here of March really becomes very deep, especially towards the end, right? The beginning becomes more about your desires, your goals, your dreams, your efforts. But as we come to the end, it really becomes about coming into a place of deep reflection. This is how you get through the frustrations of not seeing those results right away. Now, I did pull some cards here from the Vedic Oracle deck, and we have Purva Falguni Nakshatra, which, remember, that is within the Leo zodiac sign. So this is all about pleasure, creativity, right? This becomes about enjoyment. And we just talked about that in that full moon video. If you have not checked that out yet, there's a full moon that's happening in your fifth house that is in Purva Falguni Nakshatra. And so there's a lot of creative energy, again, that you can tap into, you can use, you can utilize at this moment. The next card here is Ravati. Again, all of that 12th house activation that's going to happen here towards the end of March really is going to bring up a lot of deeper insight, right? This becomes a time of really going into a place of reflection. Remember that that Ravati Nakshatra is at the end of Pisces, where this really becomes about transcendence, going beyond the physical. That Pisces energy is the deepest of all the signs. And so that deep ocean where you are going into another realm, another dimension. You're tapping into your spiritual side. And so this really becomes important for those of you who are frustrated, for those of you who are seeing some conflict in terms of achieving your goals, getting the results that you want. Our next card here is Scorpio. And so again, there's a lot here in terms of deep transformation, deep work, these deep desires coming up, where there's a lot here in terms of your work ethic, your ambition, your desires, using this to work towards your goals, to get towards those efforts in life. But there's also a lot going on spiritually in terms of facing those shadow aspects of yourself through this transit. And then our last card for those of you with an Aries ascendant or Aries moon is the Rohini Nakshatra, which of course is where this Mars and Taurus transit is going to be going through. And so there's a lot of creative energy here. There's a lot of potential for gains, a lot of potential to work hard and receive the results that you want in terms of wealth and prosperity during this transit. But remember, this is not a time to splurge, to spend. This is a time to really save and to build the security and structure. So there's a lot of impulsiveness there that also needs to be worked through. That Martian energy there of Scorpio that is happening, where there's a lot here in terms of wanting to really splurge and have comfort and enjoyment. But actually, this is your time to work and progress, not to splurge, not to impulsively spend during this time period of March 2021. So that was your horoscope for Aries ascendant or Aries moon. Now we're going to go ahead and shift forward to the sign of Leo. So this is for those of you with a Leo moon or Leo ascendant. And so to start off this month, the moon is going to transit for the first 5 days from your second house into your fourth house, where it will meet up with K2. And so there's a lot here in terms of wanting to connect back to home, wanting to connect back to your past, a lot of past life things that can come up here, karmically speaking, where you can gain some clear insight and really find a place of peace. But this really becomes a part of really settling down and calming down and finding that connection, finding that inner peace, finding that connection to home, but a lot that's really coming up from the past that is trying to give you this wisdom, this insight. You have to stay still and really be content and present within yourself to understand this knowledge that's coming up to the surface. For those of you with a Leo ascendant and Leo moon. And of course, the moon is going to transit back to this spot as well. The moon, of course, is shifting every 2 to 3 days. And so the moon is going to continuously pass by this position, but there's a lot here in terms of really connecting inward and gathering this deep wisdom and knowledge that is coming to the surface for many of you from your previous lives, from your karma, your connection to home, your family, your roots. A lot that is coming up here as far as this goes. Now, moving forward here, we are going to see the moon come into a conjunction with this Capricorn stellium that we saw that really was big during the month of February, right? But a lot that is shifting and changing as the sun has really moved ahead here into the sign of Aquarius along with Venus. So I did add in the planet of Pluto into this. There's been a lot of requests about using these three extra planets in Vedic astrology as I'm going through these horoscopes. And so Pluto really is about this aspect of destroying things and putting them back together in the right way. This recycling aspect of life, really taking the pieces apart and putting them back together as they are meant to be. And so there's a lot here in terms of this Capricorn stellium that's going on back in your sixth house, where there's a lot that you're trying to figure out in terms of your routine, in terms of your work life, in terms of what you want to do to really put things into order, to organize, to keep things in a certain way, which many of you who have a Leo ascendant are phenomenal at this, right? You have tremendous skills in terms of organizing and putting things together. That kingly nature of Leo is there, where there is this ability to keep things in order. But there's a lot that is really falling apart with all of this Capricorn activity that's been taking place here for some time. And so this really becomes about not only keeping things in order, but finding new structure, finding new routines that are better for you. So there's a lot here that is dying, that is falling away. And this is really your time to figure out how to put things back together in the right way. So if you're finding that you're running into conflicts, that things are falling apart, this is a huge sign that this is really a time to figure out how to deal with conflict, how to reintegrate things in the right manner. Now, moving forward, we have the moon that is shifting into Aquarius on the 11th, and that will lead us to a new moon in Aquarius here on the 13th of March. And so this is going to be a new moon in your seventh house. This can create some opportunities as far as relationships go. So there can be some new friendships, some new business partnerships. For some of you, entering into new relationships. For some of you, you're leaving behind old relationships during this period. But this is really becoming a new phase of your life where you are starting to improve upon things, starting to better yourself in this area of partnerships. And keep in mind that this is not only about marriage partners, right? The seventh house becomes a house of business, it becomes a house of dealing with other people in general. And so this really is a time of finding new and better ways to deal with people in general for many of you out there. So there's a lot that's happening for those of you with a Leo ascendant as far as your work life, as far as your wealth, as far as the things that you're working on and building during this period. A lot of changes that are taking place with this. Now, moving ahead here, we are going to see Mars make a conjunction over to Rahu on the same day. So, this is when Mars is starting to inch closer over to Rahu, which remember that is happening in that nakshatra of Rohini. So there is a lot here in terms of your creative potential, your potential to bring in wealth and prosperity during this transit, as it is activating that 10th house of career, of status, of authority. This is really a time to focus on what you are creating and building during this time. Again, that sixth house and that seventh house are being heavily activated during this month of March for you, where there's a lot in terms of growing and moving ahead in your business, in your work life, in your partnerships, in what you want to achieve and grow during this time. Now, moving ahead here on the 19th, we're going to see the moon move closer over to Mars and Rahu as well. And so now the moon is joining the party, where this can be a really great time to tap into your creative ideas, to figure out some things that you want to change and improve upon with your mind, with your intellect, with your creative side, really to use that intellect and that mental capacity to make some changes in the things that you're trying to work towards. So again, there's a lot of moving pieces that are happening here with this month of March in terms of business, in terms of career, in terms of what you're achieving, in terms of partnerships, a lot of things that are being rearranged and reordered in your life here in the month of March. So, great time to really work through some things. If there are taxes, if there are responsibilities, if there are legal agreements, working through some of these issues and conflicts, making the changes and correct adjustments during this period are very important. Now, moving forward on the last day of March, we have Mercury entering into Pisces, which is also where we're going to see the sun shift on the 14th. And so we're having the sun and Mercury push ahead. And of course, Venus will move along with that, as well, as Venus is still in that combustion. But we're going to see the sun and Mercury shift over into your eighth house. And this is where things become interesting, because there's a lot of conflicts, a lot of crisis, a lot of ups and downs that can come up to the surface. And so for some of you, you can see some changes and fluctuations that can kind of throw you off balance as you're moving ahead. And again, this is all about the growth, the improvement, the adjustments that need to be made here in terms of career, in terms of business, in terms of wealth, in terms of partnerships. And so there's a lot that is sort of shifting and changing in terms of everything that you're building and working on. And so this is really a time where things can throw you a bit off balance, where you can see some fluctuations that are happening here, and a lot that the sun is shining a light on in terms of things that have been hidden in the dark. And so if there are things that you have not seen, conflicts that you have not resolved yet, there's a lot that's really coming up to the surface in terms of the changes that need to be made, in terms of how you need to grow and transform in all of these areas, especially with that eighth house being a business related house. There is a lot here in terms of what you're changing and improving upon. And so that was your horoscope for those of you with a Leo ascendant or Leo moon. Let's go ahead and look at these cards to sort of give you some more insight into this, a lot that's coming up that is similar here. The fourth house is the first card. So remember, we talked about earlier how that moon conjunct K2 is bringing a lot up to the surface, a lot of awareness. And also with Mercury coming into that eighth house and the sun, there's a lot that is really being shown to you from the dark, right? There's a lot of hidden knowledge and a lot of information that's coming up to the surface that's really going to help you to grow and transform through all of this. And so this is really a great time where you want to trust your intuition, you want to follow your gut, you want to listen in word to your inner voice, your inner self, because this is really a time where there's a lot coming up to the surface for you. Now, our next card here is the Arjunaksatra. So remember that Nakshatra is in the sign of Gemini, where this is about your intelligence, right? So there's a lot here in terms of using that intelligence, using your creative skills, using your technical skills to move up in your career, in your job, in your business partnerships, all of this where you can use your mind to start integrating things and putting things together. That symbol there of the diamond where it's like you're discovering something great that you can implement to start making those changes and improvement and growth and perfecting things. And so this is really a time of, again, making those adjustments and changes as needed. Now, our next card that came up here is Venus. Again, a lot here in terms of wealth, in terms of your job. Venus is the karka for wealth, and Venus is shifting from your seventh house of partnerships into your eighth house, where there's a lot here in terms of tapping into your skills, tapping into your creativity, using this in your business, using this in the things that you want to achieve. And this really becomes a time of, again, using those skills, using your potential to move up the ladder. We have this Mars Rahu combination happening in your 10th house. And with the moon along with it, that creativity, that intellect, that ability to tap into the mind, to really use that to move up towards your goals and achievements. And a lot of desire there to move up the ladder for those of you with a Leo ascendant or Leo moon. Our last card here is the Purva Ashada Nakshatra. And so this really becomes about, again, using your skills, using your potential to make the necessary changes. And similar to what we said before, this becomes a very intuitive nakshatra, using your intuitive skills and abilities, your instinct to really weave, because another big symbol for this nakshatra is the basket, really weaving your potential, your creativity to make those necessary changes that are really going to help you improve and move forward during this month of March. So, a lot of room for growth, a lot of room for achievement, a lot of room for changes for those of you with a Leo ascendant or Leo moon. Let's go ahead and shift forward to those of you with a Sagittarius moon or Sagittarius ascendant. So, starting off this month of March for you, the moon is going to start off in your 10th house and it's going to shift over into your 12th where it will meet up with K2. So, this has been an interesting time for a lot of you with K2 back in your 12th, where K2 really is a karka for spirituality and it's sitting back in that 12th house of spirituality. So, there's a lot here in terms of really diving deeper into the subconscious, connecting inward with your spirituality, exploring different possibilities and different realms of thinking, where this is really taking you on a deeper level. And this really gives you the imagination and the creativity and the spiritual knowledge and understanding to create the things that you want in your work life, right? We have that Rahu that is sitting there back in your sixth house, and especially being in that Nakshatra of Rohini, and with Ketu being in Jeshta, there's a lot of creative ideas, a lot of imagination, a lot of potential from the deepest recesses of the mind to really give you that creative power to build and create the things that you want in your life. So this is a very, very powerful position for many of you here with a Sagittarius ascendant or Sagittarius moon. And especially as the moon comes back into your 12th house, it really starts to activate that intuition, that inner knowing. The moon is the mind, and it's coming back into the 12th house of the subconscious. Great placement here as you are tapping into your intuition, into your inner knowing, and using this creativity, using this deep knowing and this deep creativity to really work towards the things that you want. Now, you do want to be careful of any sort of addictions that can come up. This is the moon coming into Jeshta with Ketu in your 12th house. And so, yes, there can be some harmful things that are hidden away. So, you want to be careful of how you're treating your health, how you're dealing with some subconscious issues that can come up to the surface, where there can be some unhealthy habits that can come up during this time and directly affecting your physical health, as this is going to be aspecting your 6th house. Now, moving forward here, we do have the moon coming into this conjunction of the Capricorn stellium on the 9th. And so remember that we had this huge Capricorn stellium throughout the month of February, and sort of breaking that up as the Sun and Venus have shifted forward here, and along with that, Mercury shifting forward as well. And so as the moon is shifting here into your 2nd house of Capricorn, there becomes a focus here on business, right? A focus on your wealth, your security, of really working on the things that you want. And so the moon really gives you that ability to be mindful with your possessions, with your creativity, to really keep this under control. Now, the thing that you want to be careful of is that the moon is always shifting and fluctuating. And so this can be a time where your wealth can fluctuate as well. And especially with this Pluto, which is sort of something new that I'm talking about here. Many people ask about how to implement these 3 outer planets into the mix. But this really becomes a time where there's a lot here in terms of fluctuations of ups and downs that can happen in your wealth. But this also, with this moon here, really giving you the nourishment in your wealth, really giving you that opportunity to grow. And so there's a lot here that you can attain and achieve during this time. Now, on the 13th, we will have a new moon in Aquarius. And so this is a new moon that will take place there in your 3rd house, where we have this Aquarius stellium. And so this really becomes a time of, again, using your business skills, using your technical skills, using that imagination, that intuition, that potential to create something great in your life, and really connecting to the right people, connecting to the right situations that can help you grow. And so this really becomes a great new moon to tap into those creative skills, to tap into those skills that can really help you to bloom in life, that can really help you to achieve your potential in life. So there's a lot here in terms of gaining wealth, gaining fortune, gaining prosperity that can come from really tapping into your skills. Now, on the same day, we have Mars making a conjunction with Rahu. So Mars is moving closer here to Rahu, which is there in your 6th house. And so this really becomes about focusing heavily on your health. Again, there's a lot of unexpected things that can come up regarding your health with Rahu here, with Mars here, and now with the moon. There can be accidents, there can be health problems that arise all of a sudden. with all of this sudden and changeable energy of Rahu and Mars and the moon, a lot of unexpected things that can come up to the surface. And so you really want to be cautious of your health, and especially as the moon joins in on the party on the 19th, as the moon is coming closer to this point, there can be a lot of fluctuations in your physical health. So you want to be careful of paying attention to your routine, paying attention to your habits, and keeping everything in check here. Now, on the 14th, the sun is going to enter into Pisces. So now the sun is going to shift into your fourth house. And this really gives a focus on your home, your family. And so this is a great time to sort of rest and to find that peace of mind, right? That fourth house is really connected to your mind, your intellect, because originally it is controlled by Cancer, which is the moon. And so this really becomes a time about finding peace, and especially for you with Pisces ruling your fourth house, this becomes a time about this spiritual connection, this deeper intellect, this peacefulness. And so, for many of you, this becomes a great time to relax and find some peace of mind, where many of you may have been dealing with a lot of stressors at work, again, with that Mars and Rahu over there in your sixth house. There can be a lot of mental struggles, a lot of heaviness with K2 and the moon sitting back in the 12th from your work life, from your responsibilities. And so, this really gives a great time to come into rest, to come into reflection as the sun is shifting focus into your fourth house. Now, here on the last day of March, Mercury is going to shift into Pisces as well. So, we're going to see Mercury push forward into that fourth house. And so, again, there's a lot here in terms of focusing inward, on focusing on the knowledge that you can gain. This is something big that we talked about with those who have a Leo ascendant as well, where there's a lot of past life knowledge and karma that can come up to the surface, a lot that you can find in a place of peace and solitude. So, again, coming into this place of rest and reflection can really enlighten you and bring a lot of knowledge up to the surface. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the cards that we pulled for you for this month of March. So your first card here is the Arjunaksatra. And so this becomes all about nurturing. Again, this is a time where you really want to focus in on your needs, making sure that your health is taken care of, making sure that your routines are in order, making sure that you're properly nourishing and caring for yourself at this time. There's a lot of, again, health problems that can come up from those who aren't taking care of the responsibilities and necessities in your life. A lot of focus, heavy focus, with that moon, Mars, and Rahu that's coming up in that sixth house. Also, with that moon and K2 activation in the 12th, where you want to make sure that you are focused on your direction, your purpose, your mission, that you're caring and nurturing for the things that are necessary in your life. This becomes vitally important for those of you with a Sagittarius moon or Sagittarius ascendant. Now, the next card here is the Uttara Nakshatra. And so, again, this is a great time to rest, to relax, to recharge, to tap inward with that inner knowing and intuition as you're coming into this month of March here, especially towards the end. This really becomes a heavy focus where you can gain a lot of wisdom, a lot of inner knowing, especially with Pisces controlling your fourth house. There's a lot that you can gain here by really tapping inward and connecting inward with your inner voice, with your inner knowing. Now, the next card here is the Anurata Nakshatra. And keep in mind that this is a Scorpio nakshatra that is all about success, right? This nakshatra is represented by the lotus. So, this idea of something beautiful blooming out of muddy waters. And so, again, there's a lot here in terms of what you can gain by resting from the conflict, from the chaos. There's a lot of baggage that some of you can be holding here with this moon conjunct K2 in Jeshta, where there's a lot here in terms of really coming into this place of relaxation, doing the things that make you happy. This is really going to help you stay motivated, stay on task as you're shifting ahead here with these large desires for work and responsibility, where some of you are putting a lot of pressure on yourselves with this Mars activating your sixth house. And so this really is a time where you want to check in with your own internal happiness. You want to check in to make sure that you're doing the things that really bring you that joy and peace of mind as you're going through this transit here. This can also be a good time to really connect with a counselor, connect with a friend, connect with someone who can help with giving some great advice during this transit as well. As again, you have that ninth house that is ruled by Cancer. And we're going to see the moon shift through that ninth house. And so there is a lot there in terms of what you can gain, and I'm sorry, the ninth house that is ruled by Leo. So there's a lot here in terms of what you can gain and receive. And so with the sun that is coming here through your fourth, again, there's a connection here between that ninth house and that fourth house, where this becomes a great time of actually gaining fortune. That fourth house actually is the original house for good fortune, for good karma, right? It is connected to our previous lives. It's connected to our comfort or leisure, that fourth house. And so this is a great time, again, to come into a place of rest, of relaxation, of doing the things that make you happy. This becomes vitally important moving forward here. Now, the last card for you is the Vishaka Nakshatra. And so this is, again, another Scorpio Nakshatra. This is also connected to Libra as well, though. And so there's a lot here in terms of wealth and prosperity again, where this can be a great time where this is symbolized by the mighty lion, this success, this victory, right? Where this is a great time where you can gain a lot of prosperity, a lot of gains during this life, but you have to be in the right state of mind. You have to be able to make the right choices. You have to be able to be calculated during this time. So again, that sun transit with Mercury coming into your fourth house becomes very important, and especially as we're going to see a combust Venus that's coming into your fourth. You want to make sure that you are staying focused on doing what's right, on following your duty, your karma, your karmic responsibility, your dharma, right? This becomes a great time of really making sure that everything that you're doing is above board, because Venus really is not functioning correctly at this time. This can become very difficult in terms of making choices and decisions for many of you as you're moving ahead with this combust Venus. Because remember that Taurus is controlling that sixth house, and Libra is controlling your 11th house, where Venus really, the houses that Venus is activating are not necessarily functioning correctly, where there can be a lot of choices, a lot of confusion around the gains, around the things that you want to work towards. So you want to make sure that you're not just impulsively putting energy into working, but that you know what you want to work for. You know what your purpose is about. You know what your mission, your direction is all about. This becomes a huge theme for those of you with the Sagittarius ascendant or Sagittarius moon. So that was your March 2021 horoscope for all fire signs. I hope you enjoyed this. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like as well as a comment. If there's anything in particular that you'd like me to focus on in Vedic astrology, leave it down below in the comments and I will get to that in a future video. Also, if you are interested in learning more in depth about Vedic astrology, I have a course available in the Facebook group Astrology Lessons with Daquan Jones. and on the Patreon page as well. And I will keep you all updated on when this becomes available on Udemy. All of that is down below in the description, along with the comments as well. I want to thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you have a great day. I will see you all in the next video.